Alright guys, this is going to be an acrylic painting tutorial of a rainbow around sunset time in the Badlands National Park. I took this reference photo myself, and this was one of the coolest national park experiences I've ever had. We went hiking and there was a big storm coming through and we made it to the car in time. We also saw some bighorn sheep on the way back to the car. That was cool. All right, but then we're back in the car. We see this massive lightning storm, and then in about a half hour, the storm completely blows over and you get this gorgeous rainbow, and the clouds in the sky are low, but because the ground is so flat, the sun peeks through as it's setting under the layer of clouds and just like illuminates the sky and gives it this brilliant color, this brilliant rainbow, and just the tippy top caps of all these little Badland mounds are lit up by the sun and everything below it is in shadow. It was just like gorgeous. And of course there was nobody in the park. It was so peaceful and quiet. It was really like an unforgettable national park experience. So that being said, now we're gonna make a painting of that. We're using acrylic paints today. I have a variety of brushes here. This is only a 5 by 7 inch painting, so just a little guy. I made it small so that I'll be able to get it done a little bit faster. You're welcome to make this painting whatever scale you'd like. I have some flat tipped brushes, an angled brush, medium flat tip brushes, a little round tip brush, and then 2 more little guys that are round tip brushes. We're using acrylic paints today. These are my heavy body acrylic paints that I just started using and I love them. We have black, burnt umber, dioxazine purple, this one's bronze yellow, ultramarine blue, naphthol red light, brilliant blue, cadmium yellow medium, yellow Hansa, burnt sienna, titanium white, magenta, and sap green. So the way I usually start a painting is I dip my brush in the water and I just pick a color. Here I'm just going to use this phthalo blue, or this ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to sketch our horizon line. So our horizon line is about like right here. This is where the Badlands meets the sky, and then we have some clouds kind of right here. These clouds have a lot of depth. It's going to be fun to paint. And then everything's kind of lost back there. You don't see much. There's like a little bit of a hill that you see back there. And then down here we have more of our mounds. Some of these are lit up by the sun. And I'm not using the grid method here. I'm just kind of eyeballing where things are in my reference photo. Sometimes it helps if you do a little crosshair in the center and then look at your reference photo and see what is in center in your photo. Very easy to get lost in where you are when you're sketching out these little mounds here. So if you're uncomfortable with this, then I will put a grid on my photo, and I'll put that on my Patreon if you guys want to have the reference grid. Alright, so in general there's a really rough sketch of our Badlands. Now let's just start with the sky, give ourselves a break from that chaotic mess down there. Then we'll take some ultramarine blue, a little bit of brilliant blue, some white, blend that on here. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown to that. Burnt umber. And start to add that color right here, just making back and forth brush strokes. Then we're gonna add a little more white and magenta. Let me bring it over here. And then we want it to look like it's raining, so I'm just taking some up and down brush strokes now. A little bit more of my brilliant blue mixed in here. And we'll keep that brilliant blue and white and a little bit of black. Just start to build up clouds a little bit. A little more black. A little more brilliant blue and some black. Let's do a little bit of dioxazine purple. And we'll use that right here. I'm just kind of, not pressing too hard, but I'm pressing enough to get this paint on the canvas with good full coverage. Just kind of dragging the brush at an angle and then lifting it as I pick up on the other side. And a little more white right here. Let's get a little more magenta going with white. Just throw that over here. Trying to blend that gray cloud away so it's not too dark. Since we're using acrylics, we have to work a little bit faster so we can still get a good little blend in the sky. Got more of my brilliant blue here. I'm just gonna cover most of this top section with this brilliant blue. And it's nice and light at the top again. Kind of carry that down into here. You put that brush in the water and switch to our smaller round-tipped brush now. And we're gonna take some white with some of our bronzy yellow and some of our naphthol red light and some of our Hansa yellow. A little more Hansa and some more white. A little cadmium yellow, medium. Yeah, that's a good color. All right, so that's the color I'm gonna use for my highlight. I'm gonna blend a little bit of brown into my brush here first though, and a little bit of magenta. Just a little bit, because that's a strong magenta, and a little ultramarine. And that gives me a little cooler color to start with. And I'm gonna start by just plopping that paint on the white spots here and kind of working it in, pressing pretty hard here, letting it work into the wet paint that's already on here. And I'm not getting any new paint on my brush. I'm just working with what I got on my brush right now. Just covering up the spots that I left blank. So just like our little highlights. And you don't want to have any super sharp edges here. You want to have really fluffy edges because our clouds don't have like a definitive shape. They're kind of like blurry and fade out into something else. All right, now let's take a little more magenta. It was a little too much. And some brown and some black. Now I'm just gonna build up some kind of warm, well, I guess they're cool, technically. Warmer than what's behind them, but cool red, purpley clouds. And it's not pressing too hard, and I'm not using a whole lot of paint here. I'm just kind of letting that paint that's there just kind of work in. All right, now we can start to add some real highlights here, I think. Maybe we'll add a little bit more of a shadow in there first. Let's take some black, some of our dioxazine purple, marine blue, and I'll take a little bit of that red. Let's do a little bit of brilliant blue, a little bit of brown. I just blend and blend until I reach the color that I'm looking for. There we go. And it's kind of dark. So now you just want to kind of push this right under the edge of your cloud line that you just created. Just to try to keep those edges nice and soft. All right, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush for our highlights. And now we're going to go back to mixing that red, naphtha yellow, white, and maybe a hint of magenta in here. That looks really nice. Maybe a hint of sienna. How's that look? Yeah. Now we can just put this nice highlight color on here. Very lightly pressing just so it glides over the paint that's already on here. I took all the extra paint off the brush. Now I'm just kind of brushing it on in there. You can mix in a little bit more white and magenta now. Again, pressing very lightly, letting it just create these little blurry edges for my clouds. Added a bit more naphtha red in there to warm that up. Clouds are all about building. You can't just do like one step and create realistic clouds. You need to just keep building up those layers. A little more red. I'm going to put a little more of this red along the edges in some spots. The edges of our highlight clouds. And let's do some more white. A little bit of the other yellow too. And just really push a highlight in some of these clouds. Your highlights should just be like a little section of cloud. It shouldn't take up the whole thing. I think I'm gonna do another shadow in the background here. So I'm gonna mix a little more brown, ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple, and black again. We're just gonna really darken things over here. Just kind of blend that up. That looks good. Now let's work on this guy over here. It's like a little mountain far off in the distance. So I'm mixing some of my brilliant blue with my burnt umber and my ultramarine blue. Yeah, let's do a little bit of sap green in there too. And then we gotta mix in some white. And this is not gonna be a sharp edge line either because it's so far away. All these little particles in the air are going to obstruct your view. So you're not gonna have a perfect crystal clear, crisp view of this mountain back here. You wanna fuzz up the edges because that's how you'd see it in real life. And then at the base, that's where it's a lot brighter. So just take some pure white and just let it blend up. All right, that looks nice. I think maybe a little bit lighter down here. Nice soft blend up. That looks good. All right, now we're gonna switch to this flat-tipped brush and we're gonna take some of our sap green and ultramarine blue, white, and a little bit of burnt umber. And I'm just gonna put a little line way out here, nice flat line. And then we've got some parts in shadow, so we're gonna take the blue with the sap green and just start to add some of these little shadows out here. Holding the brush this way, not this way, so that we can get a good flat, straight line. And this just kind of goes off into the distance behind these mountains here. Just cleaning off that brush a bit because we're going to start working with lighter colors. So I just got some more sap green and some cadmium yellow medium, a little naphthol red, a little bit of bronze yellow, a little more of that Hansa yellow, sap green, white, and some more cadmium yellow medium. That looks close. Do more yellow. Maybe a hint of that color. Yeah, that's closer. Okay. And we're just gonna put this color in front of that green. Carry it down. And then go back into our shadowy green mixed with burnt umber and some ultramarine blue. All right, now we're gonna mix the colors that are lit up by sunlight. So I mixed my burnt sienna with my bronze yellow and some red and some white. Let's mix some of our cadmium yellow medium, a little bit more naphthol red with that, and some more white. And I think we'll be at the color that I want. Basically, a little more yellow. All right, so these guys are all in highlight here. So I'm just gonna hold the brush at an angle to give me those little triangle shapes and just swoop it down. And then these ones are still pretty sharp edged and we can see exactly what we're looking at because the light is right on them, it's really dark behind them, and they're still close enough to us that we can see more of the detail in them. And then we also have this one here, there's some have a little change in the geology that causes the rock to turn way more red right here. Alright, so those are the only caps that are lit up by the sun. The rest of it's in shadow. So we're going to take some burnt umber with our white. And stick a little bit of ultramarine blue. And that gives me a good base to work with for the rest of these. And now it's almost like you're just kind of following your sketch and you're just filling in color to fit where your drawing was. And that can be easy or difficult depending on how well you're sketched out the scene. Take a little more brown and blue. And it's going to be a little darker down here because we're farther down away from the light. And then we've got some cool stuff going on with the geology over here where we have like these rocks that have like the lines. So like the way that the sediments deposited was all perfectly flat, and these rocks never tilted or anything, so they all still have this really nice flat bedding that you can see. And a little blue and white to this area back here. Since it's farther away, it can be a little bit lighter. Kind of helps to push it back into the distance. Also have like a deeper shadow on the side away from the sunlight too. And I'm going to take a little more of my bronzy yellow, white, magenta, and that's going to be for this guy. I'll add some more white, and a little bit of burnt sienna. Taking a little more of my burnt umber and burnt sienna. Just gonna put that here. And then we've got some burnt sienna and burnt umber. Do a little bit of our purple too. A little more umber. Let's put some nice shadows in here. I'm going to take some sap green and my burnt umber and just put a base color for my green here for my plants. I'm just going to quickly go up and down here with a little softer look for the grass before I actually put the grass blades in. And let's go back with our white burnt umber. And we'll just put this in our last little bit of space where we're covering up, just finishing covering up the white space. A little more sap green. I'm just going to fill in this space with that sap green. Alright, and now we're going to switch to the smallest brush, this little round tipped brush. And this is where the detailed part begins. I don't want to go like too crazy in detail, but I'm probably still going to end up going into the level of detail I think we need to understand that these are the Badlands. So I'm mixing my brown with my burnt umber with my burnt sienna and magenta. And I'm going to dip the brush in the water to thin it down a little bit. Just mixing a little more black and purple in here. This little highlight right on the ridge here. Taking a little more purple. Just getting a couple shadows in here. A little brown. Basically, these are all just little drainage features where it rains and then the rain carves these little indents into the sides of these hills and just slowly carves out the rock and makes all these features. And at the base, we just have all little sediment at the base of this guy. And it just keeps trickling down into more and more little shadows. So I'm just blending my two browns and black again. Just gonna keep working on drawing out these shadows. Mixing my brown and purple and black to keep building up these shadows in here. You basically just give every little ridge a drainage feature, then you're good. That's the hardest thing, is just trying to figure out where these drainage features go in what direction. And I can add a little more blue and black for a shadow on the shadowy side of these little features. Gonna add a couple little highlights too. Just for the little ridges. And you're also, like, you're technically supposed to start in the far background when you're detailing these guys. But I clearly did not do that this time. Oops, I went a little too far up there. Kind of just going wherever my eye takes me, and I start to see something that needs attention. Well, they're starting to look more like ridges now. It's taken a while. This is definitely not going to be a fun one for beginners. And then we've got our shadows are like a bright red over here. We got to do another highlight on there, so I'm going to take some yellow, naphtha red, And my bronze yellow, a little more red, and of course some white. Let's do some burnt sienna too. I'm gonna brighten these guys up again too. And I'm just gonna use that bright color for up here too again. And those ones in the distance, I think I'll just do a little highlight to some of them, just to make it a little bit less flat looking. Yeah, it looks nice. Hey, this is starting to look pretty good. It's coming along. It's just, you know, I do this a lot where I look at a painting or I look at a photo and I'm like, oh, I want to paint that. And I do not anywhere in that thought process think to myself, there's a lot of detail in this painting. I'm a detailed painter. This is going to take a long time. I just think, oh, that's pretty. I want to paint that. And then I deal with the consequences. Add a little more ultramarine blue to this brown white color. I'll just add a little cool highlight to the tips of these ridges. I wish there was like a specific pattern that like worked for every single one of these little ridges, so I could tell you, okay, it comes out and then it goes out opposite direction and then makes a triangle and then goes out opposite direction, makes a triangle, but it's not exactly the same for every little peak. It kind of, way that these Badlands formed is just from erosion, and the way that things eroded was not perfectly symmetrical everywhere, so unfortunately that makes it a little bit more difficult to explain when painting it. Let's mix a little bit of our bronze yellow, some white, I'm gonna mix some of my burnt sienna and magenta. Let's use that for some of these reds and the rock beds. Alright, let's add a little more white and cadmium yellow, medium. Just do another little highlight boost on these ones in the sun. Alright guys, in general what I'm doing here is I'm just using that brush and just painting little lines for our drainage features. I'm basically painting the highlights for the little ridges, and then we have the shadow already there. And then after I paint that little highlight in for each of these sections and make little adjustments to some of the shadows. Then I start to add a highlight on top of that where even more light is reaching at the top of it. And some of our rock beds have a little bit less color and are a little bit more gray and lighter, so thinking about that as well. Yeah, let's take some of our yellow with some sap green, some of our cadmium yellow medium, lots of cadmium yellow medium. And let's water that down pretty good and just do some quick little brush strokes just to give us the grass. If you want to use a liner brush here, you can. That'll give you even more detailed, thin little lines. Starting with that highlight, and then I'm going to add a shadow. So I'm going to take some of my sap green. It's pretty good just like that. It's a good color. I'm just going to thin it down a bit and do the same thing right behind them. You don't want to fully cover up your flowers, your grasses here. And now you can take some burnt umber, add some of that in here, just have a little bit of dirt. Back to our highlight color. Another set of highlights. You want to have a good amount of paint on your brush when you're doing this. You don't want to have it too thin or you're going to get weird little like dry brush marks that you wouldn't want to have for the grass. Gonna add some ultramarine blue here. And we're gonna take some of that highlight color with some burnt sienna. Just put that in here. More shadow color, which is blue and green. And I'll do a highlight again. Just use all the yellow I got left here. Come back to our brown and black. Boosting the shadows in here again. Got a little highlight right here on this ridge. One pattern that kind of does stay true for most of these is that it's lightest highlight at the top of the rock and then it gets darker as you move farther down into the shadows. And in general, if the rock is facing left, then it has a little bit of a more of a shadow tone, and if it's facing the right side where the sunlight is, has a little bit of a brighter highlight. Here I'm just trying to get an even level of detail across the entire painting here. I'm trying to make sure I don't leave any gaps where there's just a big shadow and no highlight there, and trying to get each little crevice of rock to have the same amount of detail just across the canvas so we're not drawn to an uneven section. I also started to add more of those horizontal bedding planes that we can see in the rock, where we have that red rock going kind of horizontal across, and we have little highlights where it's a little bit of lighter gray going straight across. And you want to keep that highlight brighter on the ridge parts and a little bit cooler on the shadow parts, but keep it consistent, like wrapping around at the same level of elevation for the rock bed. Alright, I think that we're at the point here where I'm just going to add one more little thing to this little rock. Alright, yep. Okay, we are at the point where I am going to add the rainbow and then we're going to be done. So for the rainbow, I'm going to take some naphtha red, some white, just watering the brush down. Then I'm taking, oh, you know what, let's try this first. Let's just take like some white, just put that white in there, and then I'm just going to take a brush that's dry and just blur out those edges a little bit if I can. Alright, that's where a little rainbow is gonna go. Now we're gonna take some red, mix with our white, and add that right here. Just very lightly pressing. Now we got some yellow. Or green, which I'm just going to use my brilliant blue with white and a little bit of the yellow Hansa. Let's put that right there. I'm just going to take a tiny little bit of white, go over that, just to brighten it up a little. We can go back to our sky, touch up the clouds a bit where the rainbow disappears. Can make some of the rain kind of golden. And just want to, there's like a warm glow over here. I'm gonna see if I can do something about that. Just adding a little bit more ultramarine blue over here, just to darken this up. Hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I did. I got a little bit frustrated because I had a hard time explaining this part. I hope you guys were able to follow along with that. If you found a pattern or a better way to explain that, if you have an idea, just like leave a comment below so that other people that watch this tutorial can get a good idea and get some helpful tips on this one. So thanks for hanging around with me and hope you enjoyed this painting tutorial. Have a great day and happy painting. Bye bye.